Yoast made an announcement that we're doing a partnership with the NLWeb team inside Microsoft. I do know is that I'm having a lot of fun doing that work together and collaborating with that team. The resulting output, I think, will be interesting.
On today's episode, I'm joined by Alex Moss. Alex is currently the principal SEO at Yoast, a WordPress plugin with over 13.5 million active installations. He's also the co-founder of FireCask. Enjoy today's episode. Thanks again for joining me. I would like to say that, a bit about your history, actually, because you've gone from self-taught PHP developer to FireCask agency co-founder. FireCask is a digital marketing agency, to the principal SEO at Yoast. Everyone knows Yoast. How has bouncing between agency work and product work and entrepreneurship changed the way you think about SEO in 2025?
It's a really good question. Oddly, I think that my experience with SEO over the years of nearly 20 years now, I think it is 20 years, wow, I'm getting old, is that it's changed, but it hasn't at the same time. And when I say it's changed, the things that have changed, in my opinion, aren't the methodologies around marketing online on the digital landscape, but more like the tools and the sophistication of those tools as time goes on. So if we were to go back to 2003, all you would have is these 10 nice blue links with meta descriptions, and that's kind of all you got. And then ads got in the way, and then you had to adapt around that. And then there's lots of stuff over the last 20 years that have done it. But when it comes to doing multiple jobs at the same time, I did a talk actually in Brighton a year or so ago about how experimenting is good when you do different things, and it actually helps what you do in your day job, in your core 9 to 5 or whatever hours you're working. And I found that you learn a lot from different vantage points. So even when I've come to Yoast, I'm now in the product team. So I do a lot more product development and innovation that I was doing as an agency owner. I was doing none of that because I was running an agency with my other half. And now I feel as though going into the product methodology, but innovation and product development as a whole also gives me a bit more insight into what the end result is, what the business goal was to begin with, and therefore helps me in any marketing and SEO that I'll be doing in the future.
Nice. Actually, I'm curious to know about what kind of experiments are you actually doing in Yoast currently? What's maybe your favorite experiment that you'd like to share?
One, I can't actually share too much today, which is quite annoying. But all I can tell you is that earlier this week, Yoast made an announcement on our site that we're doing a partnership with the NLWeb team inside Microsoft. Within that, I can't really say much more about what's going on in there. But what I do know is that I'm having a lot of fun doing that work together and collaborating with that team, and the resulting output, I think, will be interesting, not just for Yoast or for NLWeb, but maybe even implicated, in a wider environment into LLMs as a whole and search agents as a whole.
That's super exciting. Was this a long time coming under the scenes, or was it something that just fell into Yoast's lap recently and you guys decided to go forward with the partnership? Maybe you'd like to talk to us a bit more about it as well, because it literally just happened and it's a huge deal. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, a little bit of between. I feel like it was last minute, but it wasn't at the same time. It was a few months ago, and it was more of a touch point at the beginning, but then it got more into a collaborative working arrangement where we're both informing each other from our points of view what an end result of what we're building together could be. And I think that's been really interesting because we've obviously been informed really nicely from Avi Guha, the co-creator of schema.org. He's the co-creator of the RSS feeds. Hearing his thoughts of that is extremely valuable just from the outset, which has, taught us and given us more experience and things, but we're actually able to give some knowledge and experience back from a different standpoint, which is also weird to do because, he's obviously a genius at what he does, and yet informing him on things, that feels good as well. But it's also good that it's helping the evolution of NLWeb.
I wish you could share more. Part of me wants to kind of poke and prod a bit and be like, oh, is there any little tidbits you can share with us? What have you shared? What knowledge have you shared with him that you find relevant? But maybe I'll then, kind of mask it in this question. So when you talk to WordPress site owners today, where do you think is the actual biggest mismatch between the perception of SEO and what actually helps in an AI first environment? to get into citations and make sure that, their website's getting the visibility that it needs.
I think the thing that's changed most and the thing that not annoys me, but it's quite frustrating is the whole SEO is devalued or SEO is dead line. Like maybe, I guess it's like when the CD came out and everyone said, it's not like people are saying like the music production's dead. They're just saying that the cassette may be dead and that form of thing. So comparing that to something like an SEO, maybe in 10 years, we're not going to be called SEO, but the way that we do certain things and look at things is still going to have our SEO mentality in mind. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think in the next couple of years, actually even now, SEO is being more valued. And I think the devalue and the SEO is dead is a bit of goading online, on social, for engagement farming, that kind of stuff. But I think it's much more valuable because we have historic knowledge about how search engines work through our experience over the years. And LLMs, they're not completely different in the way that they behave. The way that they output is different, yes, but the way in which they discover things to output is kind of similar-ish to what we've been optimizing for in the first place. Things like low-end work, I think, is going to be devalued, and that's where some of the SEO is devalued. So things like, and I never did this in my background anyway, but things like PBNs, guest blogging, just random, I need 20 links that are followed with this anchor text per month, like long gone are those days, and bringing back things that I think are more honest and high quality, like unlinked brand mentions, which I know some of my clients back in the day said no to, and I pushed for it to happen because if you're in a big publication, yes, in a perfect world and scenario, there would be a link and it would be followed and it would have the anchor text that you would want it to. But that's not how editorial works when you're not in control of the editorial. And if you are in control of the editorial, what's the methodology behind that strategy? And is it totally white hat? So I think those things are going to come back. Structured data, I think, is going to be, even though some people have been doubting its value, I personally believe that not only is it just as valuable, but it's going to be more valuable in the future. I feel that because not all LLMs are taking schema on board when they interpret and synthesize an answer. And I actually don't know why they're not doing it already, but they will be soon because it helps with context, and entity recognition is going to save so much time for an agent to interpret the context of how to give out an answer, that the more detail you're going to get, surely the better that context is going to be, and minimizing potential hallucinations. And I think that it's token efficiency, I would say. Token optimization maybe is something that we might refer to a bit more in the years to come.
I like that term, token optimization, because you're basically detailing how these LLMs work, right, with the tokenization of words. But what are maybe your top 3 advice for implementing token optimization, practical advice that you can give SEOs out there?
Be consistent in your structure. And when I say structure, I don't just mean IA and information architecture and URLs. Like, that's a given. That was something that we've been saying before, the launch of OpenAI and the whole boom of the LLMs. That was something you should always be doing. It's things like text and being concise. I do give a lot the example of, let's say you go onto a website of, a tech company, for example, and you go to the about page and you read the first 4 sentences. And sometimes I still don't know what they do, right? There's great fluffy words that are trying to impress the human, right? But agents aren't sold by that stuff. They're not sold by emotion. They're sold by information and answers and insight. So when I think of being concise on that about page of the tech company, within the first 2 sentences, just tell me what you do. What's the product or service? What's the benefits of it? Just tell me those 2 things immediately. And maybe that's more about the product, but even about a company itself. Who are you? Where are you from? How did you get to be where you were? Don't tell me about like how you like backpacking in Machu Picchu. That's great, right? But really, is that additive? Is it really useful information to the person who's trying to connect with the brand and the potential product or service?
Nice. Practical sound advice. We don't want to really know about your personality. We just want to know about the product. And I think a lot of people previously had been doing a lot of keyword stuffing, or, even like those recipe blogs and stuff like that, where it's a whole lot of not really useful information before you get to the meat, which is what LLMs actually need right now, right? Like that works in your benefit if you put the most important information up front and be as clear as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's good. When you're saying recipes, I immediately thought of chefs, and you've got some chefs that go, let's just open my cupboard in my kitchen and get some ingredients out. And they pull out a bunch of ingredients that no normal household actually has. And they work with all of this stuff. Oh, look at all of this nice stuff. I don't even know. I'm not good at cooking. My other half does that, which is much better. But there are spices, and you just see the chefs coming out and saying, oh, yeah, you can easily make this. And yeah, you can if you had all of those things, but no one really has them. And then you've got the other chefs that are like, I know what most households have in their cupboards. Here's some recipes where it's highly likely you'll be able to do that right now. Or if you can't, you don't need to go more than to your local supermarket to get that thing. You don't have to like go to a specialist website. And it's the effort, right? They're giving you all there on a silver platter to produce what you want to produce right then, which is what an agent loves.
And I would like to now talk more about metrics, actually, because what sort of, you had an interview with Design Rush where you said that, SEO success now depends on AI visibility and that traditional metrics like rankings and click-through rate are losing their value. So what are the new metrics that matter to you? What are you pushing in Yoast? Because I understand you've also recently launched Yoast SEO AI Plus, so this might tie into that. So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts about metrics that matter in the AI era.
Yeah, well, I think this is actually a tricky one to answer, and I don't think that anyone can really answer it with true conviction for a good year, maybe, because the dust of the LLM emergence hasn't settled yet. There's still new shiny things coming out. I mean, probably while we're talking now, there's been 3 announcements from 3 different companies about 3 new tools that we've all got to go out and test now. But soon that dust will settle, and when it does, those metrics will be a bit more consistent. And up until now, because so many things are changing all the time, and even Google's normal SERP has changed from the last 12 months to the 12 months before that, and maybe to the 12 months before that. But before that, it wasn't really that dramatic. But now this is extremely dramatic. And because it's going to change more, those metrics that might be valid today might not be valid in a year from now. And that also is annoying when you're doing year-on-year data, which is going to be really annoying for all of us SEOs right now already, and will be for the next year or two ahead, because we've got to compare to those things. But back to what those metrics are. Yeah, ranking, because what is ranking now? Because you could go to position 4 of something, but if it's all mixed in context in a synthesized answer, it's not like I'm 4th being mentioned sometimes, but I know that a lot of people do see that as a metric. And when it comes to CTR, if there's less rankings being showed, there's less impressions, there's less clicks, then the CTR goes up and down. So it's not like they're not there and they don't exist. It's just that they're not as valuable as they once were. But what are the success metrics? I mean, they were there since before LLMs emerged. Your bottom line, your profit margins, your business goals. Anything that you do should be aligned with those business goals. And whilst we think of SEO metrics, I guess for now, all we can do is use the benchmarks that have been using already. So if you're using SEMrush or Ahrefs, and that's what you've been doing for the last 5 years, I would still say to people to still do those reports and still show what, because they are still reporting on rankings. It's not like everything has fallen off a cliff, and it's a good gauge. And it reminds me of the Alexa rank, if you remember that. Again, that's making me feel my age as well, but it wasn't a true metric, right? It wasn't like, I don't remember in any of my reports saying we need to get to this number in order to reach KPI. But it was a good benchmark against the web as a whole to see where you were and how, and I feel like that's the same thing. The ranking now is more of a benchmark to what it was before, and no one knows what the next year is going to bring. Like, is Google actually going to get rid of completely as a primary option the normal web search, your native web search, and now everything's AI mode? Because if that happens, impressions are going to go down, CTR is going to go down again. What's ranking if nothing's going to be shown in the first place? I just think it's a difficult one to navigate. And when it comes to Yoast AI Plus, and we've got AI business insights, brand insights, sorry, where you go and you fill in, you populate information about your site, about your brand, about what you feel as though people are thinking about, and it generates some prompts that it believes people would type in, and then it gives you what that synthesized answer is in a nice way, going, well, actually, your brand is mentioned X amount of times over all of these prompts. Your competitors are ABC, they're mentioned here, there, and that's the best insight right now that we can get. But I know that that's still something to report on and it's still something we can do. And again, that gets really annoying because you've got ChatGPT, you've got Gemini, and you've got Perplexity. So now those metrics are 3 metrics because they're in different channels, just like social media was. So Social Media Manager kind of has a similar thing here. It's not changing, but that person's got to report on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Reddit, and whatever else they're reporting on, both in paid and organic. And all of those things combined, it's just going to be a bit of a messy chart and a messy graph for the next year or so, but at least there's something in there to look at.
A lot of information to look at. What would you then focus on? Because it can get overwhelming, right? Like you're adding all these new different channels. So how do you focus? What advice do you have for SEOs on maybe synthesizing this data? Like I understand things are going to change every 12 months and you probably are reluctant to say it with certainty, but what's maybe your prediction and what's your personal advice?
I feel as though one of the LLMs is going to somehow make a way to converge and aggregate that data into one and bring out a better reporting tool. I don't want to predict it because it's more of a hope than a prediction, is that this time in the next 12 months, someone is going to create, let's call it a new version of Search Console. Whether or not that's one of the providers that we know of, or whether or not that's a third party that somehow uses everything together, like what Yoast is attempting at the moment. We've got ChatGPT. We're about to be launching Perplexity in that as well. So it's going to get different things. And going back to how do you present all of this, I mean, it's the old answer of it depends, because it does. Because just like social, one brand may be having a lot more success on LinkedIn than X. The next brand will have the opposite effect. And I think that's the same with LLMs, because the more technical you are, the more likely you are to use Claude. The more creative you are, the more likely you are to use Perplexity. And the more everyday searches is going to be ChatGPT and Gemini. But again, those two are quite different as well, because ChatGPT is the most popular, but Gemini has Google behind them. It works in different ways in different places. So Gemini 3 is being used in AI mode, for example. So it's using one product to form another. And I think that ChatGPT is going to have quite the battle next year. And I know that they're creating a device as well, the new core device with Johnny Ives, which they say is going to be out within the next 2 years. And I wonder what that's going to do to the LLM economy as a whole. Because a new device being worked on by the person who, designed the iPhone and the MacBook is going to be interesting to see what that is and whether people actually want to use it as well. Because I'm assuming it's going to be one of those microphone always on, listening to everything you're doing, which is going to be handy for one person, but an extreme abuse of privacy to another person. So again, how's that going to play out in the world as a whole?
Yeah, no. So regulation-wise, like this might be more accessible in other parts of in different continents, in Europe or within the EU. I feel like it'll be stricter here, so this might land a bit later. It's hard to predict, right? But what I found interesting about what you said is like how you could potentially even map user persona to the different LLMs.
Yeah.
Your everyday Joe uses ChatGPT. Someone with a more technical, possibly developer background would prefer Claude. And that might be an interesting way as well that we would see people reporting with these LLMs, right? Similar to social media. So I found that very, very interesting.
Yeah, well, it might be a thing that you concentrate on. So let's say you're a tech company and it's obvious that maybe Claude may attract better synthesized results. Maybe the challenge for an SEO will be, well, how do I get the creative to get him interested in my brand? Then you're optimizing for potential Perplexity answers. But then it goes back to what I said before. You just need to be concise and your text format be good, and don't waffle too much, which is something I'm very guilty of when I'm in these kind of things. Don't write 1,000 words just for the sake of filling 1,000 words. If you've got something to say that can be done in 200, do it in 200. But if it does require 1,000 words, do it. But don't bloat it. Don't filibuster.
Makes sense. More quality over quantity. I quickly want to touch about Yoast SEO's AI Plus feature. And because I know that you currently do your AI checks not in real time, and you've set the cadence to be weekly and feel that that's sufficient for now. Where do you sort of see the market eventually needing more granular, near-time AI visibility metrics?
That I don't think I've got an answer for that, to be honest, because real time is going to be really hard. Because even rewind, what is it, 9 months, a year ago, like ChatGPT was like 2 weeks out of date. So if you asked it about something that happened yesterday, it just wouldn't know. And now it does, but it's trying to find a way to actively do that. So it's still pulling off a web search, right? I'm going to be very interested to see what real time things are like, because things like Black Friday are a good example.
Exactly.
Everyone's announcing things like now, this week, for
Yeah.
something happening tomorrow. So the LLMs have to be knowledgeable of that. And I think that's harder for the LLMs. But again, it comes into, it's going to be harder to us. And I hope that whoever makes that analytics tool that covers everything about everything is going to be, because then you have to think about Google Trends as well. And yes, you can search in there, but that only gives you an example of what people are searching for. And again, does that include chats within Gemini or not? It's unclear. And I don't even think they know the answer. I'm going to be attending Google Search Central Live in a couple of weeks in Zurich. And I hope someone asks someone that question who's going to be on the search or maybe the Search Console team, to how do we effectively report? Because people like Yoast, we're trying to be on the forefront of everything and report as much as we can, but no one really knows, I think, what the standard will be. And we just want to be there when there is a standard, and do it and help website owners at least report on something that's at least as useful as possible.
And how do you currently make the decisions for product development for your AI analytics tool, these brand mentioning features? What goes on behind the scenes in Yoast?
Yeah, so we have product meetings every week, obviously, and we do stand-ups. But let's say, for example, I come up with an idea, or someone else comes up with an idea. We go through our manager Nico. He gave us a good template to work from called the working backwards framework or method, and it was introduced, or it was used a lot in Amazon, where you're like, okay, what's the end goal? What do you want it to do, and what's the benefit? You know how I was saying before, like these are what the metrics should be, and then you literally work backwards. Well, if I want that, what has to be made? And okay, how is that going to be made? And then you work all the way back to the initial idea again. And hopefully that answers the question. So to things like LLMs.txt, that was a good example of how I put that forward. It was quite a simple, it was a simple thing to make compared to other things that we could do and do. And whilst people debate it a lot, it took us less time to go through the working backwards method and build it all than it was to discuss whether it was actually beneficial to the web as a whole. Now, we like to see something like that to be a standard. That would be great. And we want to support it. And people who may disprove it may say that there's not enough data, but I say it's very quick for the end user to create. It can be as simple as a toggle button, and it's a method of insurance because other LLMs do use it. And just because OpenAI said that they don't, that doesn't mean that other LLMs aren't using it and that your audience may not be there. And I guess I can compare it to, well, just take, if you don't think any of these things work, take structured data off your site. If LLMs aren't reading them, why do you have them there? Like, it's the same thing. It's there. If it wants to get picked up, it will. And if you want to be seen and you put everything out there to be seen, something might see you. And if you don't make those steps, then maybe it won't happen. So that's one example. The dashboard is another example. We've got a dashboard in the back end. We've got an integration with SiteKit. And it all goes back to, is this going to be useful for the user to either get something from it or be able to take an action as a result of it? And that's kind of where we're usually at when we think of things, because we could put lots of shiny AI things around our site and we say no to things. So one good example is it could be really easy for us to go, click this button and we will create 1,000-word blog post based on, a focus keyword here and blah. But we don't want to do that because we don't think it benefits the web because of things I was saying before. It's like content for content's sake, which is older than what an LLM, LLM's existence. We've been telling people not to just create content for scale. That's something that we stop because we want to see, is it good for the web in the future? Because we are on a lot of sites, and we know that if tools are there to abuse, there's always going to be bad actors who are there to do black hat techniques to abuse that.
I like how you are focusing on if it benefits the web, and that's sort of the forefront of all your product development and adding these new shiny features. If it's because I think that's also a problem that a lot of tools right now are facing, right? It's what more can we give our users to help them during this uncertain time, but also how do we not bombard them? That's why I was very curious to know what sort of frameworks that you guys use to help with your product development. Nice examples. I think it's a good time to segue to the last section, which is my rapid fire round, where I ask you some LLM questions, your preference, and get your hot takes. You ready?
I'm ready.
First one, what's the strangest slash most interesting thing you've used an LLM for?
I've used it I'm trying to think. There's a couple of things like, I'll tell you one. It was just a personal thing. I had a load of flights booked with EasyJet, which is a British flight operator. And then when COVID came out, they had to cancel everything, right? So you accept vouchers or your money back, right? And I accepted vouchers because I was, trying to support the brand and not like ask for my money back when I know a lot of people were. Got vouchers and they're only good for a year, right? But we know that COVID lasted longer than a year. And in that, there was quite a lot of vouchers because I had a lot of flights booked for business and stuff. And I lost quite a few of the vouchers in the ether because I had like 8 flights and they all had 8 things, and then I had to spend them within a year. So you had to book new flights you probably knew you weren't going on, blah, blah, blah. It went on about 6 years and I lost about 500 euros just in the vouchers. I lost them, and I used Gemini inside Gmail to find out exactly when I lost them and where, and I was able to get them back. So it helps with customer service and stuff. It helps you write emails. So that's one thing it has helped me with. As well as that, actually, which is maybe more fun, is Lego. So I grew up building Lego, and I had this huge box. It was huge in my head as a kid, but when I got it back from my parents, it was like normal box, but it was just loose pieces everywhere. And these Lego pieces were like from the 80s, very old. I had no instruction booklets. I had no context on anything. And I used Google Lens to take pictures of the less common pieces. And I was able to find which set they were all from. Then I used my memory as a child to go, oh my God, I remember playing with that. And then, it must be in this big pile somewhere. And then I downloaded the PDF instructions, which didn't exist in the 90s. PDFs didn't exist in that way. And I used them, and I built loads of Lego as a result with my son. So that was great to go through that experience and be able to actually do it. And I built stuff I don't even remember that I think my older brothers had. And then they obviously dismantled it over the years. And then I got hold of them, and I didn't have any instructions, so I didn't know what I was building. But I've got an 80s spaceship, right? And it's quite cool. It is quite cool, and it's very nostalgic.
I love that. I love how you used it for something physical as well, like building, with a toy, and so that it can aid you in spending time with your son. That's actually so sweet.
Much more interesting than the EasyJet customer service story as well.
No, I wanted to give you some kudos on the fact that you wanted to stay loyal and supportive of a brand like EasyJet, a flight, who have been sort of controversial at times, but you were like, hey, no, I'm actually going to support their business. Because usually during that time, people wanted to support small businesses, independent businesses, but you're like, let me support EasyJet and get a voucher instead of getting my money back.
Yeah, I mean, there was an incentive. They offered you a little bit more for the vouchers, right? But I could have easily taken money and had less of a headache over the years and just taken the money, as it were. But yeah, they may not be a small company, but then I also remember like how often I've flown with them over the years, and like I remember flying with them in year one. I don't. In the UK, there was a newspaper, and you could collect these stamps if you bought the newspaper every day for a week. And if you had the stamps, you could use them to get really discounted rates. I used to go on trips to Amsterdam with my friends when I was 18, and the flight was like £35, which is about less than $50. And it was and that I was on an EasyJet flight then. It must have been 2003. So technically, I've been flying with them for over a generation, and they're not bad. They just get a lot of bad PR because they're low-cost flying. But if you're on a low-cost airline, don't expect business class treatment. And I don't know. I know that the same goes with Ryanair, but I don't know. I've always thought of if you're playing the game, don't expect to be provided with a different game. Like, it's part of the experience, isn't it?
Fair enough. It's a first for me. I'm always used to the EasyJet hate, so it's lovely to know that they have loyal, customers out there. And you're very
Yeah.
nostalgic of the brand, so that's very sweet. What's your favorite LLM?
Ooh. Well, I would go with Perplexity at the moment. And I say that because I'm using Comet as a browser and I got early access to it and it's amazing. The experience of an LLM being embedded within your browser. I'm sure that as time comes, it will leave the browser and enter and be on your local machine, and it will help with a lot of other stuff. I know it's starting to do that, like you can search for files locally, but when it comes to everyday tasks that we all do every day, soon that's going to be a bit more elaborate. I know that also ChatGPT made Atlas.
Atlas. I
Yeah,
just wanted to ask, have you tested Atlas? How do you feel about Atlas? Because there's also controversy around security concerns, right? And you feel quite confident with how things are going on with Comet and Perplexity and how it can access your
I
data?
mean, I know there's lots of legal stuff going on. I mean, I read this morning that Amazon are trying to sue Perplexity because Perplexity is using its agents to buy products on behalf of the human, right? Which on the consumer side sounds like that's the way it's going to go. You start having a conversation with the LLM. The LLM goes, "Would you like me to buy this from Amazon?" And they go, "Yeah," but supposedly it's against terms of service. So I think there's going to be these weird wars and the adaptation in the next year about what to do. Haven't used Atlas. Wait, sorry, I used it once the first day, and I don't know why it just didn't sit with me the way in which maybe I was already used to Comet, but it's not like I needed to get used to something different. I don't know. Maybe Comet was also because it just looks like Chrome. I know it's built on Chromium. I can't remember if Atlas is built on Chromium. I assume it is, but it just
Yeah.
seemed a bit different. And this seems, if you've been using Brave or Chrome or any of the other Chromium, it's just very familiar. So there was that, and there was the seamless nature of moving. Security, I think, will get better. But I mean, I've not given Perplexity my credit card details, except for, a pro account. I haven't told it to purchase on my behalf, more so because I don't trust it. I want to make the final decision as a human. I like doing that shopping. That's just me as a
You
person.
want the human in the loop
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
end.
At least, tell me what's going on. But I also know that people will go, I don't know what's going on. I need, product X that's compatible with product Y that I already own, and then people will just let go and delegate all of those tasks to the agent. I think that'll be the next year. We'll be playing around a lot more with e-commerce in general. You can see it starting already, and you can see ads coming in already into AI mode. So I think next year is going to be a bit of a change of how synthesized answers are displayed, because again, remember me talking about the 10 links in 2003? There was no imagery, there was no rich content. It was just it was very simple, kind of like how it is right now in all of those LLMs. You ask it a question, it gives you generally just a formatted text answer, and anything you want to do more about seeing images, you either have to ask specifically or you have to go off elsewhere. I think that might change. I think things like embedding images and videos, things like that, are going to happen in the synthesized answer rather than going, here's a YouTube link, go over there, they'll put it in. And ads is going to, again, change the way that display happens, because you can't just, first of all, you can't just put an ad in the middle of a paragraph and go and talk about shoes, and then in the middle over there, in the middle of the third sentence, there's, an Adidas ad, right? I think people aren't going to like the potential lack of objectivity of the output of an answer because someone's paying for that ad to be there. Again, they're going to have the separation like the normal SERPs do. I believe that's what LLMs have been doing this year, trying to figure that out, because that's the only way. That's how Google's monetized mostly is PPC and paid advertising everywhere. And these LLMs are going to have to do that for longevity.
So you feel like it's basically going to be a copy paste then? As much as they try to be different, at the end they might just succumb to the structure of traditional SERP.
Maybe. And I think that's where maybe AI overviews kind of came in. Like, if you want a little bit of the synthesized answer from an LLM, here it is. But if you don't, just keep scrolling and then you'll get your old school results. But I don't know. I mean, it's something that we're going to have to get used to, because it's been like that for a generation. And the output now is not completely different, but it's totally different. And our search behavior is changing. But weirdly enough, my wife, who also runs FireCask with me, she's been searching conversationally the entire time. And I used to mock her, and she's on the creative side, I'm the technical side. So if I want to search for some trainers, I'll just put in white men's trainers, right? You know, the more common thing, my wife Anna would write, where is the best place that I could find some white trainers that would suit with the, like she's talking to in a normal query, super long tail, I was calling it at the beginning, but now maybe she was ahead of the time. Like, and that's how people will do it. And I think even more interestingly, my parents have zero technical ability. They still call a laptop a machine. They still call a printer a copier. They don't understand anything, but they use Gemini every day. And I found that really intriguing. They don't use ChatGPT because they've got an Android. Oh, they're all in the
The barrier
Google.
to entry is too high for that. They rather use
Yes,
something
yes.
native.
But to them, Gemini does what they need and they find it very helpful. And I think for the older audience who are less technically minded, I think feel more welcome in this place because now it's gone from, your answer engine to your assistance engine. And the answer engine was in an informal way going, here's some answers, go and figure it out yourself. But now they're getting the help. And I think that assistance to non-technical people and not just, the older generation, but just non-technical people in general is going to be really, really handy for the world as a whole.
And I think this is very in line with your previous point of, even how you report for different LLMs and now matching the sort of demographic you're going after to these different LLMs, I think can be quite helpful to businesses.
Oh, 100%. It's 100%. I used to have a client who had an older generation as their main target. When I said it depends on where you're focusing on different LLMs, and then I compared it to social. And it was like that with like Bing, because they used to sell they were an ability superstore. So they sold anything that helped with, accessibility and helping older people who, like wheelchairs, special kettles that don't spill, all of that kind of thing. And all of their main audience was inside the Bing atmosphere. And that was because most of these people were not technologically minded. They did not have a Mac because that's too, technical for them. They'll have a Windows machine, which will have Edge, which will be using Bing as their default. So that's stuck with some of that audience as well. And therefore, Bing PPC performed way better than Google PPC because Google's is more expensive. And therefore, the CPA is harder. And with Bing, there were more people there. So they could really take an opportunity. And they didn't need to do things like Facebook because, well, they did eventually because those people's children were now also sometimes making a decision. But those are really interesting things about where the audience is. So yeah, personas are very important, ICPs, ideal customer profiles, and then work backwards. And now you have to add in what LLM would they probably use as a default? Like what have they got installed on their phone and they're using daily rather than the one that they try out?
All information you can add to Yoast's tool,
Oh no, I'm going to watch this back and take it back to a meeting afterwards.
What's one SEO task you never want to do manually again?
I mean, I'm not a fan of writing content, which I guess is something that is going to be done for the future for a long time, is writing content. It's just something that I always put to the bottom of the list. But then weirdly, when I do it, and I send off a post to say Search Engine Journal, the editorial's like, this is really nice. Like, this is good writing. It's not that I'm bad at doing it. It's just that I don't like doing it. And historically, I just hated doing outreach. And I know that people love doing that stuff, but I wasn't a person to do 100 outbound emails a day to try and get attention for a random client. I was
Who's
much
ever
more...
saying they loved doing that was clearly lying. I don't think anyone genuinely, unless anyone watching this would like to reach out and say that they've genuinely enjoyed cold outreach. No.
I mean, I know a couple of people that do enjoy it, but I guess it's
Really?
like it's that dopamine hit of getting a yes from
Response.
someone, right? And
I see.
if you get a big publisher, yeah, I mean, even I got that. And I wasn't the one doing the work. If someone in my team was like, oh my God, I've just got us in like The Guardian or whatever, I'd be like, oh my God,
Wow.
that's amazing because it's such a hard feat. And you also know that it's not the sexiest of tasks in the SEO world. But yeah, I would say that's probably it. But everything else I find, not that I hate those things or anything, they're just not as fun as, say, looking inside code or fixing a very, very large problem with the easiest of solutions.
What's one AI feature or product you wish existed?
One that controlled the way that you behave elsewhere online. I know things like social, is a bit of a cesspit of anger and hatred. And I don't like what people say online when they're hidden behind an X profile, for example. I feel like I also understand how important freedom of speech is as well. So you have to respect the fact that people should be able to say what they're saying. But when people say what they say, I feel that some are doing it on purpose to rage bait is the best term for it. And I don't think that's good for the world or the web. And I hope that LLMs understand that and help us navigate a way to have less of that in the future.
Enforcing, yeah, some sort of social enforcement of like maintain your tone of voice or your decorum across all platforms.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, but wouldn't say enforce, because then all of a sudden, you're enforcing something against my freedom of speech. But a good example sometimes I use is if I don't like, if I want to write an angry email, we've all done this, right? And you write it out, don't press send. In fact, send it to yourself, right? Because sometimes the act of pressing send is that thing in your mind that it's been sent, even though it's not going to the person. And sometimes you just shouldn't be sending that email to that person, even though it's how you really feel and you may be correct. But sometimes don't send that email, send it to a friend who knows that they're going to get a rant, if you want to call it like that, and maybe keep it more private, because what's the benefit of saying that thing or writing that thing in the long term?
Favorite tool you didn't expect to love?
Ooh, Slack. I thought it was going to create a lot of distraction, but I feel like the tools inside there and all the integrations is great. Not as much of a fan of Teams. I'm sorry, Microsoft, but Slack, it's just my cup of tea. And weirdly, Gmail, some of the features in there, like snooze, I don't think I would operate as well without a snooze option. And I had it before it was in core in a tool called Streak, which is like a CRM Chrome extension. I think it's weirdly what I'm saying is now the benefits of tools within tools, which is weird. But yeah, I like those little things that help a lot of people that some people don't notice. Again, I think it was because I was watching that Johnny Ives, Sam Altman interview yesterday. And one of the questions at the end was, what do you think's the best like thing that's been invented? And you could see that Johnny Ives, who obviously is a creative genius, was thinking, and he came up with two. One was the spoon. I was like, very clever. And then he talked about pockets, and he went, one day someone invented a pocket. And you're like, those things it's things that nobody knows. Like, you don't even think about pockets anymore.
You take it for granted, but it's intertwined in your everyday life. Like
Exactly.
Gmail, snooze, send later. I love those features as well. So I love that you shouted out, because usually people go for the shiny, more, sparkly tool. And these are things that are inbuilt that make your life easier. Also with Slack, I was curious to ask, what are some new Slack features that you really like?
New ones, I actually don't. Well, I've been using their AI features in it to summarize things. That's really handy when you go on holiday for 2 weeks and you come back to 300,000 messages, and it can summarize those things. But I actually think my favorite one's the old school RSS feed. It's so classic and people don't use them enough. And I remember back in the day, I used to use something called Yahoo Pipes. I don't know if you remember. So Yahoo Pipes think of it as an RSS aggregator. Let's say I read 10 different publications. Instead of subscribing to 10 different RSS feeds, Yahoo Pipes was a service that could take the 10 and make it into one big RSS feed. And then you could monitor that. So you could manage everything. And then you could use a tool to actually output it somewhere else if you wanted to be Black Hat. So I know that a lot of Black Hats used it to say, take a news piece over there from the RSS, then use that RSS content and then publish it onto another site. But RSS is like the underpinning of some of the internet, I believe.
Yeah. It's been around.
Forever.
In 6 months from now, what AI capability will change SEO significantly?
I think the way in which it can buy for you, and it'll start to understand more about you, and then it will be able to maybe buy things actively without you realizing you want that thing, which will be weird. I think the breakthroughs is that, again, I think maybe Altman and Ives are trying to get to is like connecting to your thoughts rather than what you're outputting on a keypad. But again, that comes with lots of dangers because people think bad things as well. So I don't know how they're going to do that. But that's going to be really interesting in how they take our personalities and characteristics and use that to help you with those answers in the future. And the more it knows, it's just data collection right now. That's all it is. So in 5 years, it'll know a lot about me. If the more I speak to it or, engage with it, the more it'll know about me. So soon it will know that maybe I don't like hot tomatoes, or I love a sunrise and I'm a beach person over a skiing person. And, and then it may inform all of these different things you don't understand. But again, is that going to be a danger? Because what happens if I start to like skiing holidays in the next year? Like, it's those things of, do you want it to keep on a formula to which makes you comfortable? Or is it going to be a thing where you provide it settings to go like, push me as a person further? Maybe even though I don't like skiing, maybe you should
add that in. It's sort of like the Amazon, I think that was the Amazon controversy, right? Where they would randomly suggest things that are a bit out of your buying history, just to sort of like push you in a new direction, maybe. Or also they could predict if you were being pregnant and you didn't even realize you were pregnant. And that was already sort of a daunting and scary outlook for users, right? But it
Yeah.
seems like you're quite comfortable with the LLMs helping you predict your personality in the future, push you forward. Sort of like a
Yeah, but I want to separate myself as well, because I don't know, I am now starting to, and I think more people will do it soon, and it'll have that more and more over the time, is that people will value in-person experiences. And I don't know what interview I watched. Again, I'm watching a lot of interviews and taking everything in, is that when it comes to AI slop, right? So at the moment we have all of these LLMs, and they're extremely intelligent, but yet it hasn't given you the cure for cancer. It hasn't told you how to clean up all the rubbish in the sea. It hasn't given us these long-term, future sustainable things. But that tool over there can give me a selfie with Elon. Like, I don't know, the way that people use it is maybe not needed. And also, what's real, what isn't. Like, if I showed that picture to my child, he will believe that I was in front of Elon Musk when I was not, right? So what does that do to the way people tell stories if it's not true? But now you've got photo evidence of something happened, but what is evidence? But someone said, if you're a child and you've come into the world with LLMs just as a thing, it's not a new thing. It's new to us. Just like for the older generation, the internet was a new thing, but not for us, because we've grown up with it, and therefore we're more climatized to it. But then there's the danger of, let's use, like, I don't know, the pyramids in Egypt. Like, if a child saw those pyramids as a picture right now, would they believe that it exists? Right? And you can't confirm that. Whereas before all of this image generation and all generation in general, like, if you didn't see a picture, it didn't happen. And therefore, if you saw a picture of the pyramids 20 years ago, someone took that picture, and that it's real. But now, is it? Like,
well, subjective.
exactly. And the only way to find out is to experience it in real life. That's where I think those real life weirdly, I think travel might have a big boom in the next few years, because people are going to be yearning for a real experience.
This is why conferences as well, they seem to be working better.
Yeah. Yes. Which is good, because after COVID, everyone's been a bit weird about social interactions, but now maybe the LLMs are going to help us bring us out of that post-COVID slump. It's just this social blur that we're all having at the moment.
Yeah, reattach to community, reattach to the outside world, because it's becoming too dystopian through our computers. But if AI vanishes tomorrow or turns too costly, which part of your workflow breaks first? And this is my second last question.
Well, in Yoast, not a lot, because I can just keep on doing product development. It would just be different, and we'd be focusing on different stuff anyway. But in SEO, I mean, maybe there'd be less questions to answer. We've had all of those client calls going, how can I be at the top of ChatGPT? And you're like, there is no such thing as the top anymore, or the bottom. And it's those conversations that I think we had that at the beginning when SEO was first on the rise, and people didn't understand the value. Businesses didn't understand the value. And now, years on, I think that they do understand the value, but they don't have a clue. And because we're not 100% certain on the future, like I've been saying in this already, it's very hard to get buy-in to people. So if LLMs disappeared tomorrow, I feel like we'd get more short-term harmony in reporting and success metrics, but I don't think that's for the greater good. Unpredictable and valuable.
Nice. We'll leave it at that. I think that's a great way to sum it up. Alex, let the people know how they can stay in touch with you, keep up with what you're doing,
Sure.
and also to share what Yoast is currently working on that you're cooking up in Yoast.
Well, I would say the NLWeb stuff is going to be the most interesting and exciting stuff I'm going to be primarily working on. But you can reach me. I'm on X sometimes at Alex Moss, which I think is at the bottom here. And also I'm on LinkedIn, easy enough to find. I look like my face in the profile picture. And if you want to follow stuff that's happening, I post about Yoast products and marketing initiatives anyway through those two channels anyway. And if you have a question, feel free to DM. I do reply.
That's how I got you on the show.
Yeah, exactly. See, I do reply.
Thank you so much for your time, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.